Have a seat, everybody. Make yourselves comfortable, please. Well, happy Sunday, everybody. It is great that you're here today. And you know what? I am so glad that you came to the 10:15 service. Because all the troublemakers come out at 10:15. You're going to fit right in. Well, the title of my talk today, it's a very intellectual talk. It's a very intellectual title. The title of my talk today is, What the Heck? That's the title. Because I believe that when the first disciples on the first Easter Sunday got their first look at the empty tomb of Jesus, they must have said, what the heck? You know, what's going on here? I mean, and it feels good to say that. I mean, try saying that. I'm going to give you a chance right now. It feels very good. It's emotionally satisfying to say something like that. So I'll tell you what, everybody say it out loud as you can when I count to 3. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. What the heck? Good job, but I know you can even do better, so let's practice it one more time because you're going to need it for this talk today. Ready? 1, 2, 3. What the heck? All right, I'm telling you, can't you imagine it? Now, picture it. They saw Jesus slaughtered. They came to him. They pried the corpse down from the cross. They took him and they put him in a dark tomb that was like a cave. Then they rolled a 2.5-ton stone in front of the entrance of that cave-like tomb. And then they just turned away and kind of washed their hands of the whole thing and think it's over and done with. But the women are always trouble, aren't they? Because women, they just don't like to give up on the men they love. And the women loved Jesus, and they said, let's just go to the tomb one more time, and let's see if there's something that we can do. And so some of the friends of Jesus, some of the women got up early on Sunday morning, and they made their way to that tomb, and Mary Magdalene was the first to get there. She finds the rock rolled away, the tomb wide open, and the body missing. She blinks, kind of rubs her eyes like this, and you know what she said? 1, 2, 3. What the heck? So Mary goes running to find the men. She runs into Peter and John. She says, wait a minute, you've got to see this. She tells them the whole story. So Peter and John, they start running, racing, hoofing it to the tomb. And John gets there first. He's all out of breath from running the whole way. He takes one look at that tomb, and guess what he says? 1, 2, 3. What the heck? Then Peter gets there, puffing and puffing from his run. He's old, he's out of shape. Peter bursts right into the tomb. Now picture what he saw at that moment. Now remember I told you it was almost like a cave cut out of the side of a hill. He walks in. There's 2 rooms in this tomb. The first room, both rooms are made of stone because they're cut out of the natural limestone of the cliff. The first room is kind of a room with a stone shelf over on this side where mourners could come and they could sit and pray and mourn their loved one. And then on the other side, there's a small doorway cut into the wall. Peter makes his way through that small doorway into the actual burial chamber of Jesus. In that room also, there's a stone slab, a stone shelf cut for the body to be resting on. But when he looks at that stone shelf, he sees that the body is gone. It's missing. He sees all the grave clothes, the shroud that was around Jesus. He sees it all lying there, but it's like an empty cocoon. There's no body there. And at that moment, don't you know what he said? Aren't you just sure of it? 1, 2, 3. What the heck? And we're still saying it today. What the heck happened that day? How do you explain a missing body? Well, I noodled this whole thing out. And actually, I got to tell you, I did some research in great big grown-up books. But I prefer for the 10:15 crowd to use technical terms like noodle. So anyway, I used my full superhuman noodle powers to figure this whole thing out and to think it all through. And I'll tell you what I found. I found that there were only 4 possible explanations for what happened that day, that first Easter morning. 4 possibilities of why that tomb was empty that morning. Let's try them out for size. The first possibility is somebody stole the body. I mean, obviously, if I put down a dead body right here, and then I turn my back and walk away, and I look back and it's gone, obviously somebody stole the body, right? But then again, 10, 15 people, put on your thinking caps now. Who would want it? I mean, just saying. Who would want a 3-day-old corpse? I mean, do I have to spell out for you what it would smell like in that warm environment after 3 days, right? So, what's the motive for that type of crime? I mean, my dear detectives, who would have anything to gain from stealing a 3-day-old corpse? I mean, the disciples? They were all hiding for their life behind locked doors. They're cowering there thinking they're the next ones who are going to be arrested. So they're not coming out of hiding. They're not going to try to steal a body. How about the Romans? Do you think the Romans stole the body? Well, I'll tell you, they wanted Jesus dead and gone. End of story. In fact, the Roman government wanted an end to this business so badly, they posted a guard unit around the tomb so nobody could get there and tamper with anything. Now, a Roman guard unit consisted of 16 soldiers that were trained to hold a battle line against an entire battalion of enemy soldiers. If those 16 soldiers failed to hold their ground, guess what? It was punishable by death. In fact, what they would do, if you abandoned your spot, if you didn't hold your ground against the enemy, they would burn you alive to make you an example to others. They would strip you naked, stand you before all the others, and they'd start the fire using your own clothing and uniform. So what happened that morning? What happened that first Easter morning to make those battle-hardened soldiers flee for their lives? What did they see? What did they experience? Eyewitnesses later discovered that 2.5-ton rock had somehow been blown outward from the tomb. They found it tossed aside, thrown uphill some distance away from the opening of the tomb. And whatever happened that morning at the tomb of Jesus was so wild, so dramatic, so powerful that Christianity began to spread like wildfire. I mean, belief in Jesus being risen from the dead spread like wildfire across the world, starting right there in Jerusalem. Right where anybody who had any doubts whatsoever about what happened could go right down to the tomb and look for themselves. Where anybody who had any doubts or questions could talk to the eyewitnesses firsthand. Where anybody who had any doubts or questions could stare into that empty tomb and say for themselves, 1, 2, 3, what the heck? So do you really think somebody just stole the body? Think 10, 15 troublemakers, think. You say, okay, Big Jeff, and listen, all right, I know that's what you call me behind my back. It's all right, I can live with it. So you say, okay, Big Jeff, maybe the body wasn't stolen, but there's another possibility. Maybe Jesus never really died. That's the second possibility. You're like, yeah, that's the ticket. Jesus just looked dead that day. Like the Princess Bride. He wasn't all the way dead. And then later when they took him down from the cross and they put him in the cool air of the tomb, it kind of revived him. And so there never really was a resurrection because Jesus never really died that day. Okay, 10, 15 people, nobody is smarter than you. So take a minute to think about this. No one comes down alive from a Roman cross. No one, not even Jesus. And just to be completely sure that he was dead, do you know what they did to him? Just to be completely sure that he was dead, a Roman soldier marched up to his cross. He's hanging there like this. And the soldier took his spear and plunged it into Jesus' chest. Eyewitnesses there that day reported that a clear fluid mixed with blood spilled out, indicating that it penetrated his heart. Now, according to a recent article in the Journal of the American Medical Society, and I quote, "Clearly the weight of the historical and medical evidence indicates that Jesus was dead before the wound in his side was inflicted, and supports the traditional view that the spear probably perforated not only the right lung, but also the pericardium and heart, and thereby ensured death. Accordingly, interpretations based on the assumption that Jesus did not die on the cross appear to be at odds with modern medical knowledge," end quote. And for the sake of argument, just for the sake of argument, what if Jesus somehow did survive the cross? How does a critically wounded Jesus push aside a 2.5-ton boulder? How does he crawl out of the tomb and then find a way to overpower, to fight off 16 professional soldiers? And think of the condition he would have been in. I mean, instead of falling on their knees when they saw him, falling on their knees to worship him, they would have pitied him. How would a bleeding, battered man in critical condition, hanging on to life by a thread, how would he convince the disciples that he was, in fact, the all-powerful Lord of life? They would have taken one look at him, and they would have called a doctor. Instead, they take one look at him, and they fall to their knees, and they worship him. And they declare that he is the embodiment of life and health and vitality and glory and joy and power. And they fall to their knees in front of him. And they say, "My Lord and my God." Now I know what you're thinking. Some of you are thinking, well, that sounds like pretty intense. That sounds pretty extreme. Maybe the disciples were just kind of like, wound up. They were delusional. Like cray-cray, all right? But come on, 1015. You are cynical people, aren't you? I tell you, I'm never going to have this much of a problem convincing the 1115 people. But you guys, you are tough on me today, so let's go there. There's a third possibility. The disciples were crazy. They just imagined the whole thing. Maybe they were delusional. Maybe they were hallucinating. Maybe they truly, in their mind, they believed they saw a risen Christ, but it was just a matter of wishful thinking. Well, folks, let's get real. There has never in recorded history been a case of group hallucination. Ask any medical expert. Never in history has there been a case of mass hallucination. You see, hallucinations they're individual events. They're like when you have a dream at night. They can't be shared between people. And in this case, hundreds of people saw Jesus after he was risen from the dead. In fact, one time more than 500 people saw him at once. One expert said, if you had 500 people all having the exact same hallucination, that would be more of a miracle than the resurrection itself. In the weeks following the resurrection, Jesus appeared 12 times to at least 515 people that we know of. He talked to people. He taught people. He ate with people. He even had one skeptic come and he said, "Go ahead and you can touch the wounds in my hands if you have your doubts." I mean, one lawyer said, if we had a trial on the question of whether Jesus rose from the dead, and if we were to call all 515 eyewitnesses, and if we gave them each 15 minutes on the stand to tell their story, just 15 minutes each, and we did it 24 hours a day, we'd be sitting here listening to eyewitness testimony for 6 days straight. 129 uninterrupted hours of eyewitness testimony. If you sat through all that, do you think you'd be able to walk out those doors today? Do you think you'd have any doubt whatsoever that Jesus rose from the dead? Just look at the evidence. The evidence does not support the theory that the body was stolen. The evidence does not support the theory that Jesus never really died. The evidence does not support the theory that the disciples were just seeing what they wanted to see, kind of a crazy hallucination. And that leaves only one possibility. Only one. He is alive. Jesus defeated death. Jesus conquered the grave. He did it. And you are going to do it too with his help. And that's all that matters. That's all that matters. When you reach that moment in your life that all of us are going to reach eventually, when you reach that ultimate heart-stopping, razor-sharp moment, when there's no more time left for you on this earth, and it's time for you to face eternity, nothing matters more. Nothing. A couple of weeks ago or so, I was with Roy Cook. Now, most of you know Roy. Most of you love Roy. Roy was in this church every single Sunday with a smile on his face and a song in his heart. But now, at this moment, now there was a hospital bed set up in Roy's living room. And he knew that that moment was soon going to arrive for him. The end was right there. I said to him, Roy, it looks like you're going to beat me to heaven. He beamed and gave me a great big thumbs up. I said, Roy, when you get there, what are you looking forward to the most? He said, seeing Jesus. One day you're going to see Jesus. Because Jesus isn't dead. He's alive. He's risen. He's waiting for you on the other side. He'll come and get you when it's your time. One day you're going to walk through those gates of glory. And when you get there, just say, did Roy put in a good word for me? And they'll say, he didn't need to. Jesus already did. You'll look around you at that moment. You'll look around you at all the beauty and all the glory that takes your breath away. And you know what you're going to say at that moment? You are going to say, 1, 2, 3, what the heck? Let's bow our heads. Risen Lord Jesus, Lord of life and defeater of death. This is the best news yet. You're alive. Alive. The grave tried to swallow you up, but you walked out smiling. Death tried to coil its darkness around you, but you slapped it away. You said, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even if he dies. One day my short time on this old earth will draw to an end, but the grave won't be able to hold me down, not even for a minute. Death won't be able to contain me, not for a second, because I put my faith in you, risen Lord. I want everything that you did to count for me too. And finally, at that ultimate moment, I will then experience firsthand the blessing we always talk about at this church. I will experience that magnificent moment when I walk through gates of glory to see my loved ones and to see you, Lord, eye to eye and face to face. Amen.